Okay, so my name is Brenda Baldeo, and I had the Egyptian calendar system. And then the first image is just an image of like a farmer, because the Egyptian calendar had a lot to do with the farming cycles, and the water and everything. So my introduction is how many calendars are there? There was many calendars around the world. However, the Egyptians used three main calendars. So they used the civil calendar, the lunar calendar, and the solar calendar. Okay. And the various calendars. So the Egyptians used three different calendars, as I just mentioned, to notate their time and events, which included the civil calendar, the lunar calendar, and the solar calendar. In Egypt, the years were based around the king's reign. Years would end with the passing of a king and would restart with the installment of another king, meaning that the years weren't counted based solely on time passing. They were based on the time a king spent in the crown, basically. So if a king was king for 10 years, then it would be a 10-year period, and it would restart with another king following, so maybe like his son, and it would go back to year one. So their years weren't fluent like ours, like how we have like 2013, 2014. Their calendars were made up of 12 months, just like ours, consisting of 3 weeks each month. The week consisted of a 10-day period, and their days were also made up of 24 hours, just as ours. The months were consisting of 30 days. So in total, they had 360 days in a year, and five days and a quarter of a day weren't accounted for in earlier times. The Egyptians also used seasons to organize their months, having 3 seasons with 4 months in each. And their seasons were based on the inundation and growing of crops, because, as I mentioned earlier, they had a very agricultural dependent environment and society. A lot of them were farmers. So the lunar calendar, it's kind of known as being like the first calendar used by the Egyptians in order to keep record of their time. This is where we see a lot of connections to astronomy. We see the rising of the exploration of astronomy, like the moon, the stars, astrology that we continue to see in like pop culture, for example, such as zodiac signs, and understanding how each moon, I guess, has an effect, or each planet has an effect on just everyday life. The lunar calendar began on the first day of the old moon crescent, when it wasn't visible. The star Sirius, was used to determine the beginning of the year and the first month, as it began the season of inundation and flooding. And then that's when they would begin their year, and kind of base their year around that. Because the lunar calendar was shorter than the solar calendar, there was a 13th month intercalated, incorporated. The 13th month was named Top, and it was incorporated in order to keep in keep the agricultural seasons in correspondence with the lunar calendar. So because of that discrepancy of the 5 days that were kind of left out in their year, it was kind of made up and into another year. Another month. Sorry. Just in order to keep the agricultural seasons aligned with the lunar calendar, as the calendar began to be more inaccurate with the growing crops. And then this is a image that references the month of Shebeth, and it just shows like different hieroglyphics, just announcing the month, and it's just kind of evidence to prove that they did have months in place, and they did have in order to their year and their time, even though it was inaccurate, maybe not inaccurate completely, but it wasn't as corresponding as other civilizations. The civil calendar was the second calendar used by the Egyptians in order to be more precise and administrative, and administrate their time more accurately. Like I mentioned before, the use of the lunar calendar helped, but it wasn't as accurate and precise as anyone would need their calendar to be, especially seeing as how the Egyptian civilization depended a lot on different natural events. So the lunar calendar also was made up of 12 months with 30 days in each. Because of this, there were 5.25 or 1/4 of a day that would shift the whole calendar and were later accounted for through the installment of the 5 epagomenal days following the 4th month of the year, when they would be considered festival dates celebrating the gods' birthdays. Many people say, or I guess I read sections where these days, the 5 epagomenal days, were these kind of festival days that were kind of sacred in a way, because a lot of Egyptians could not work, as a lot of myths say that they would be cursed, or it was bad luck to be working during those days. So these days they had off. they were able to rest those festival days. The civil calendar was also known as the wandering calendar. This was because of the solar and civil calendar becoming more out of sync each day. So each day that passed, each quarter of a day that wasn't counted in the solar and lunar calendar made the civil calendar further away from I guess their planification. I don't know. And this is a YouTube link. It's about a minute long. It just kind of goes over the solar calendar, and seeing how how, sorry, not the civil calendar, civil and solar. I'm so sorry. Just explaining how it was, I guess, inaccurate with their time and how the seasons flowed because of it. So the solar calendar was similar to the rest of the calendars, as it had 24-hour days with 30-day months, which made up a year having 12 months total. Again, it was also 360 days. The solar calendar had a 10-day week with 9 days being work days for artisans and 1 day being their rest day. So they had a 9-day work week, and 1 day being their rest day, the final day. Using the solar calendar meant that the Egyptians left out the quarter day from each of their years, meaning that accumulation of unaccounted years became the reason for the seasons to be out of place, as the winter months became part of the summer seasons. So, as I had mentioned previously, the quarter day that was missing, and that was like not being included into the lunar and the civil calendar, really changed the patterns of the seasons. It made for the seasons to be kind of backwards in regards to having winter months in the summer season. So if it was summer, because of the unaccounted missing days, later through the years, the summer would be their winter months. And then there were many attempts to reconstruct the calendar to have it match the lunar calendar and seasons. However, the priesthood declined the attempts. It's, I guess, also incorporating the previous knowledge of the church having power over most civilizations. It would be understanding as to why the priesthood kind of negated plans to create a more accurate calendar, kind of just because it would interfere with dates that were already taken up to celebrate certain gods, or because of religious events. Sorry. And then this is an image I found on one of the websites depicting the accounting of the hours in a day, and it has like the hieroglyphics. And so there was 3 seasons: the inundation, growing, and the harvest. So we have the Thoth, the Phaeophi. Sorry if I mispronounce most of these. I'm not really good at names. The Athire, Joica, Tybe, Machir, Feminoth, Permalthi, Pacones, Payani, Epiphi, and Mizor. I probably chopped those up, but those were the months, the names of the months, and then also kind of they were all every fourth one was going into one of these seasons. So the first four would go into inundation, which began with the Cyrus star, and then the next three would be growing, and the next four, and then the last four would be harvest. And by the names or by the categorization of the months, you can see how agriculture was a huge part of the Egyptian life, because it was all centered around the agricultural background, like obviously growing and harvesting crops were were determined to be seasons where agricultural life was very present. And then time. In Egypt, the year was divided by 12 months. Each month had total of 30 days or 3 weeks. Each week consisted of 10 days. Each day was 24 hours, 12 daylight hours, and 12 passing time hours. And then each year had 3 seasons with 4 months each, followed by 5 days to account for the missing days out of the month. And then that 0.4 of a day was not counted up, was not accounted for until later, around Julius Caesar. And then these were the resources. Yes. Okay. Thank you.